You may relate to one of these characters more than the other. But in fact, all four are in everyone if we look at these characters as archetypes. We can trace archetypes back to Plato, and Carl Jung adapted and applied archetypes to psychology. More recently, Caroline Myss further developed archetypes. She's the author of the book, Sacred Contracts, Fulfilling Your Divine Potential. She's further developed archetypes and defines them as patterns of behavior and spiritual energies that allow you to access your personal power to fulfill your divine potential. But it's a process. This is my story. My saboteur archetype has been working overtime. He almost stopped me from coming here today to take this stage. I had my own aha moment. I'm a therapist, and I had my own aha moment. Saboteur had written a lecture about archetypes with enough material for a professional workshop. With the saboteur at my side, I had researched for weeks what others have to say about archetypes. My saboteur goes to the gym. He's been working out all of my life. He's got biceps, triceps, 24-pack abs. He's a monster driven by fear. He reminds me to stay quiet and small. He does not want me to stand in my power and vulnerability. So he reminds me to stay quiet and small since he fears I have nothing of value to contribute and no one wants to hear what I have to say. He's convinced me that I would only embarrass myself. But I've decided to be courageous. Only courage melts this monster. I've always dreamed big. I have the archetype of the magical child. So I was really comfortable living in a dream world where everything was possible because nothing had to be done to manifest the dream into reality. My victim archetype internalized the messages of being small, powerless, and unworthy. And my prostitute archetype kept me spinning in the black hole of possibility since I believed I could not afford to take a risk. This kept me from tapping into my power and the gifts I've been called to contribute to the world. I was stuck, and I had no faith I could set myself free. You might be wondering, what is a prostitute doing with my magical child? Don't worry, it's not creepy. We tend to think of the prostitute as only selling one's body, but according to Caroline Myss, it has all to do with faith. If you have faith, no one can buy you. You have to have faith that you can take care of yourself and that the divine has your back. When you lose faith, you sell yourself short. I sold myself short by isolating myself and consequently hoarding my gifts. I wrote stories and songs that no one would read or hear. I threw artwork into the trash. I closed the door of my therapy room to clients. These were all lose-lose situations. I was in prison, locked away from those who Caroline Myss would say I have a sacred contract with. I was imprisoned by what she calls the survival archetypes of adaptation: the wounded child, the victim, the prostitute, and the saboteur. And the saboteur was my prison guard. In my last apartment in Chicago, before I moved to New York 5 years ago, I had a spare room that I rarely used, but it was symbolic of my inner world. At first, it was an ad hoc art studio crammed with art supplies, including paints, brushes, found objects, and empty canvases. But I closed the door on my creativity. It felt too vulnerable to express and expose my inner world, and I had no patience for the developing artist in me. I blamed and shamed myself, but in looking back, it was my saboteur, hard at work keeping me safe and small. Had I been able to see through the lens of archetypes, I might have been able to escape sooner. But I was unconscious to the power of archetypes. When something is unconscious or not conscious, it lives in shadow. That's how the saboteur had so much power over me. He lived in shadow until I became conscious of his presence. Back to that spare room. When I decided it was wasted, I gave away the supplies to other artists, thrift stores, and threw the rest in the trash. I was done with that nonsense. I was going to be a therapist again. I was going to be reasonable. I was going to do what I studied and trained for. So I painted the room a verdant green. I got a cozy chenille sofa and a bold chair, and I hung my degree and license on the wall. I was ready for business. There was a separate entrance, so clients didn't have to walk through my apartment, and there was a bathroom down the hall. It was a perfect setup, but the door remained closed. There were no clients, just like there had been no art. On my last day in that apartment, I sat in that room, now empty, and the ghosts lingered. The stagers worked around me, preparing the apartment to be sold to new owners. But no amount of white paint, faux plants, and non-evocative prints on the wall could hide the crimes that were committed there. My saboteur had gotten away with murder for years, and the blood remained, even though the evidence was being wiped away. I still saw what never was but could have been. That room was my black hole of possibility, where my artist and healer fell into a sort of Bermuda Triangle. The storyteller, the artist, the healer disappeared. Their promising future never came in that room. But being possessed by the saboteur is not a life sentence. I'm here to tell you that. It took me coming to this stage to disempower the saboteur's hold on me. Every time I have the courage to take a stage, I continue to disempower the saboteur. As I walked through this door of infinite possibility, I activated the archetype of the magician. It seems like magic, but as Dorothy discovered in The Wizard of Oz, she had the power all along. We all have the power to access infinite possibility. We just have to have courage to take the first step. For me, the first step was onto this stage.